Text came in at 7:14 on a Tuesday morning. I was still in bed, half awake, one arm reaching for my phone out of habit. My sister's name lit up the screen, and I remember thinking, she never texts this early unless something's wrong. I opened it. Hey, so I've been going back and forth on this for weeks, and I finally just have to say it. The venue has a hard cap on guest count, and between his family and the people we absolutely have to invite for work, we're already over. I had to make some really hard cuts. I'm so sorry, Jess. I love you, but I can't add you to the list. It's just the way it worked out. I read it twice. Then a third time. I was being cut from my sister's wedding guest list. Not by a stranger. Not by someone I drifted from. By my sister, Tara, the one I drove 2 hours each way to help move into her first apartment. The one I lent $3,000 to when she was between jobs and her rent was due and she swore she'd pay me back but never quite did. The one I stayed on the phone with until 2 a.m. The night she and her fiancé, Cole, had their first big fight, and she was convinced it was over, and I talked her down from the ledge of throwing the whole relationship away. That sister. I set my phone face down on the nightstand and stared at the ceiling for a long time. The thing is, I wasn't even surprised in the way you'd expect. I was surprised the way you are when you've been sensing something for a while and then finally get confirmation. Like when a doctor tells you what you already knew was wrong. The shock is real, but it lands on ground that was already soft. I got up, made coffee, and sat at my kitchen table in the quiet of a Tuesday I had to myself because I'd taken the day off to help Tara pick up centerpieces. I'd already told my manager I'd be out. I'd already rearranged my whole week. I texted back, I understand, thank you for telling me. I did not say it was fine, because it wasn't fine. But I also wasn't going to perform devastation over text for her to screenshot and share with Cole and say, see, this is what I'm dealing with. I called my mom that afternoon. I needed to tell someone who knew us, who knew the whole landscape of what this meant. She was quiet for a moment after I told her. Then she said, well, honey, weddings are expensive. And you know how many people Cole's family has. That was it. That was the whole response. I said, Mom, I'm her sister. She said, I know, but what do you want her to do? She can't afford to keep adding people. The venue held 220 guests. I looked it up later. The venue held 220 people, and I was one cut too many. I didn't yell. I didn't cry on the phone. I said, you're right. I'll talk to you later, and I hung up and sat with a particular kind of loneliness that only your family can make you feel. That night I opened my laptop. I'd been saving a small amount each paycheck for 2 years. Nothing dramatic, just a little fund I called my someday account. For a trip I kept saying I'd take when the timing was right, when work slowed down, when things settled. The timing had never been right. Things had never settled. I booked a flight to Savannah, Georgia for the same weekend as the wedding. Then I booked 4 nights at a small inn on the riverfront that I'd had saved in a tab for 8 months. Then I closed my laptop and went to bed and, for the first time in days, I slept through the night. I didn't tell anyone right away. Not my mom, not my friends, not Tara. I just let it be something I was doing for myself. Quietly, the way you hold something small and warm in your hand, before you have to put it down. About 3 weeks before the wedding, my mom called. Are you really not going to your sister's wedding? I held the phone away from my face for a second. Mom, Tara told me I wasn't invited. I'm not on the guest list. I'm not going because I wasn't asked to come. There was a pause. Well, you could still show up. Your family. She texted me and told me she cut me. I have the text right here. I just think it would mean a lot to her if you were there. I don't know what they told her. I don't know what version of events my mom had been given, but it clearly wasn't the one where Tara sent me a text at 7:14 in the morning informing me that I hadn't made the cut. Whatever story was circulating in that household, it wasn't the accurate one. I made other plans, I said. I'll talk to you after. Cole's mother reached out 2 weeks before the wedding. I didn't know her well. We'd met maybe 4 times at family dinners. Always pleasant, always a little formal. She sent a Facebook message that said she was sorry to hear I wouldn't be attending and that she hoped everything was okay and that Tara was going to miss me. I didn't reply. I didn't know what to say that wouldn't start a fire. I didn't have the energy to fight. My friend Wendy called the night before my flight. "Are you actually doing this?" she said. She didn't say it with judgment, more like the kind of surprised admiration that you have when someone you love does something quietly bold. "I'm actually doing this." "Good," she said. "Send me pictures." My flight out of Charlotte was early Friday morning. I got to the airport at 5, grabbed an overpriced coffee, and sat by the gate watching planes in the dark. There's something about airports before sunrise that feels like you're getting away with something. Like the day hasn't officially started yet, and nobody knows where you are. I boarded, put on my headphones, and watched the city shrink through the window until it was just lights, and then nothing. I landed in Savannah just after 8. The air was thick and warm in that particular southern way that feels like the whole world is moving a little slower. I got a cab to the inn, left my bag in my room, high ceilings, a wrought iron bed, the kind of place that smelled like old wood and fresh linen, and went out to find breakfast. I walked along River Street with a paper cup of coffee and a biscuit from a place the cab driver had told me about. The river was wide and gray-green, a container ship moving slowly in the distance. I sat on a bench and watched it. I didn't check my phone. The wedding was that afternoon. I spent the morning at a bookstore on Bull Street where I stayed for 2 hours and bought 4 books I probably wouldn't get to for 6 months but wanted anyway. I found a table at a cafe nearby, ordered an iced coffee, and read for an hour and a half without interruption. I didn't think about the ceremony. I didn't picture the aisle or the vows or the reception hall I wasn't in. I thought about the book in my hands and the coffee going cold, and the fact that the afternoon light in Savannah does something particular to old brick buildings that I'd never seen anywhere else. My phone buzzed at 4:47 p.m. I was back at the inn, showered, stretched across the bed with my book. I glanced at the screen. It was my mom. I set the phone down and kept reading. It buzzed again. And again. I flipped it face down. I took myself to dinner that night at a restaurant on the river that I'd found in a travel blog. I sat at a table by the window and ordered shrimp and grits and a glass of white wine and watched the water go dark as the sun went down. The restaurant was full and loud in a warm, happy way. A birthday party at one table, a couple clearly on a first date at another, a family with 2 little kids who kept sliding off their chairs and being scooped back up. I was the only person eating alone, and I did not mind one bit. When I got back to my room, I had 14 missed calls. 7 from my mom, 3 from my aunt, 2 from a number I didn't recognize, 1 from Tara. I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at them for a minute. Then I opened my texts. There were a lot of those too. My mom, "Call me. It's urgent." My mom, again, "Jess, something happened. Please call." My aunt, "Honey, where are you? Your mother's trying to reach you." And then, from Tara, "Cole left. He just walked out. I don't know what's happening. I need you." I read it a few times. Not because I didn't understand it. I understood it completely. I read it because I was trying to figure out what I felt, and the feeling was more complicated than I expected. I wasn't happy that her wedding had fallen apart. I want to be clear about that. There wasn't a part of me that was sitting in that inn room feeling triumphant while my sister cried somewhere. That's not who I am, and if I pretended otherwise, I'd be lying. But there was something else in there. A quieter thing. Something that sounded, if I'm honest, a little like, of course. Because Cole and Tara had been fighting for the better part of a year. I knew that because she called me during every single fight, sometimes at midnight, sometimes from a parking lot, sometimes from the bathroom at work, because she couldn't hold it together at her desk. I'd listened. I'd advised. I'd talked her through the moments when she was ready to end things, and the moments when she was convinced everything was fine. I knew things about their relationship that probably neither of them had ever said out loud to each other, and what I knew was that they had real problems. Not just the surface friction of 2 people learning to live together, but deeper things. Different ideas about money, about whose family mattered more, about what kind of life they each actually wanted. I had tried, gently, twice to say, "Are you sure about this?" Not to blow it up, just to open a door. And twice she had shut it in my face, And then she'd cut me from her wedding list. So when I sat there in Savannah and read that text, Cole left. He just walked out. I felt sad for her, yes. But I also felt the particular exhaustion of being someone's lifeline for years and then being quietly discarded the moment you were inconvenient. I called her back. She answered on the first ring. She was crying, but not the ugly cry kind, the kind that sounds like someone who has already cried so much there's nothing left but the residue. "Where are you?" she said, the first words out of her mouth. Not "I'm sorry for calling." Not "I know you probably don't owe me this." Just, "Where are you?" "Savannah," I said. A pause. "What are you doing in Savannah?" "I took a trip." She was quiet. I heard noise in the background. Voices, movement. She must have still been at the venue or somewhere close to it. "I didn't know," she said finally. "I know you didn't. Mom said you were coming." And there it was. That explained the calls from my mom asking if I was really not going to the wedding. That explained Cole's mother reaching out. Somewhere along the way, the narrative had shifted. The story being told was not Tara uninvited her sister, but something murkier. Something that let everyone feel like I was the one who had withdrawn. I was the one who had chosen not to be there. "Tara," I said. And I kept my voice even because I'd had a full day of being peaceful and I wasn't going to give that up now. "You texted me on a Tuesday morning and told me I was cut from the guest list." "I have that text. I didn't go because I wasn't invited." That's the whole story. She didn't say anything. "I'm sorry Cole left," I said. "I genuinely am. But I don't know what you want me to do from Savannah. Can you come back?" "No." Another silence. I didn't fill it. "I don't understand why you're being like this," she said. The crying had shifted into something harder, something with an edge. I thought about all the things I could say. I thought about the 3 a.m. phone calls and the $3,000 and the 2 hours each way for a move that I hadn't been asked to help with so much as assumed I would. I thought about all the ways I had made myself available, reliably, consistently, without being asked twice, and how none of it had apparently added up to a seat at her wedding. "I'm not being any particular way," I said. "I'm on a trip. I'll call you when I'm home." I hung up. I expected to feel worse than I did. I expected the guilt to come flooding in, the old familiar current of it that I'd spent most of my adult life swimming against. The guilt that said you should have gone, you should have been there, you should have found a way. But it didn't come, or maybe it came and I just watched it from a distance, the way you can watch a wave from far enough up the beach that it never reaches you. I made myself a cup of tea from the little basket on the dresser. I opened the window and listened to the river sounds, water and distant music and someone laughing 2 floors below. I got back into bed and picked up my book. My phone buzzed twice more before I turned it off for the night. I found out the details in pieces over the following week. The way family news always travels, in fragments, through secondhand accounts, each one slightly different from the last. From my aunt, Cole had started a fight in the bridal suite before the ceremony, something about money. Specifically about the amount Tara had spent on the wedding without telling him. Numbers she'd assured him were different from what the final invoices showed. From Wendy, who had a mutual friend in the wedding party, it hadn't exactly been a secret that Cole had been questioning things for months. There had been a conversation the night before the wedding, during the rehearsal dinner, that had apparently not ended well. From my mom eventually, in a phone call that was quieter than I expected, I think they had a lot of problems that none of us knew about. I didn't say I knew. It wouldn't have helped anything. In the weeks after I got home, my mom called a few more times. The shape of the calls was always the same at the start. Some version of the family is struggling, things are hard, Tara is devastated, and underlying all of it, like a current running beneath the surface, was the implication that I should have been there. That if I had been present, if I'd just shown up even without an invitation, maybe I could have kept things together somehow. It took me a while to name what bothered me most about that, and when I finally found the word, it was this: convenient. It was very convenient to need me now. It had been very inconvenient to need me on the guest list 3 months earlier. I went to dinner with my mom about a month after the wedding. Just the two of us at a diner we'd been going to since I was in high school. We sat in a corner booth and ordered the same things we always order, and for a while, we just talked about ordinary things. her garden, my job, a show she'd been watching. And then she said, "I think I owe you an apology." I looked up. "When you called me to tell me about the invitation, or the lack of it." I should have said something different. I should have said that wasn't right, and I didn't. She turned her coffee cup around in her hands. "I think I was trying to keep the peace, and I ended up being unfair to you." It was more than I'd expected from her. More than I'd let myself hope for. "I appreciate that," I said, "and I meant it." She nodded. She didn't push it further, and neither did I. There was still more to say between us, and there would be time to say it. Or maybe there wouldn't, and we'd find a way to live alongside the unsaid things the way families often do. But it was a beginning. Tara and I have talked twice since I got back. Both times were short and careful, the way conversations are when both people are still figuring out where the ground is. She apologized eventually. Not fully. Not in the way I would have wanted, but enough for me to hear that she understood she had done something that had mattered. She didn't explain the logic of the decision, and I didn't ask her to, because I'm not sure I needed the logic anymore. The fact had already happened. It was something we would both carry forward, and how we carried it would determine what came next. I don't know what comes next, honestly. What I know is that I sat by a river in Savannah on the weekend my sister got married, and I ate a very good dinner, and I read a book I'd been meaning to read for 2 years, and something in me that had been wound tight for a long time quietly, finally loosened. I know that I am someone who shows up. I always have been. I show up with my time and my money and my 3 a.m. patience and my ability to talk someone down from the worst versions of their own fear. I show up, and I always assumed that was a given, that it was simply who I was, and so, of course, I would keep doing it indefinitely, no matter how the math worked out on the other side. But here is what that trip taught me in the simple language of 4 days on my own in the city I'd never been to. Showing up for yourself is not a betrayal of the people you love. It is, if anything, the only honest thing you have to offer them, because you can only give from what is actually there. And for a long time, I had been giving from a place that was running low without telling anyone, including myself. I came home with 4 books, a small painting I found at a market on my last morning, a slightly sunburned shoulder, and something harder to name. A sense of my own outline. Like I'd been blurry for years, and the 4 days alone had sharpened me back into a shape I recognized. My aunt asked me if I regretted not being there. I thought about it honestly before I answered. "No," I said. "I really don't." She looked at me for a moment like she was waiting for more. Some qualifier, some softening of the answer. I didn't give her one, because the truth is that the wedding happened without me just fine, in the sense that it happened. And my life continued without the wedding just fine, in the sense that it continued. And more than continued, something shifted. Something that needed to shift. I went back to work on Monday after I got home. My manager asked if I had a good trip. I said, yes, actually I did. She said I looked rested. I said I what? The small fund I'd been saving, the someday account, I started it again the week I returned. A little each paycheck. Building back toward something I haven't decided yet. Another trip. Something I've never let myself do. An open space in the future with my name on it. I've been thinking a lot about what we decide we owe people, not in a hard, bitter way, more in the way you turn something over when you finally have enough space and quiet to actually look at it. I love my sister. I will probably always love her in the complicated, bone-deep way that you love someone you've known your whole life, someone whose face was part of the first world you ever understood. That doesn't go away. I don't want it to. But I'm also allowed to love myself with the same consistency I've loved everyone else. I'm allowed to take up space in my own life, to be on my own guest list every time without question, even when, especially when, no one else is handing me a seat. I earned that seat, in Savannah at a table by the river, watching the water go dark. I already had it. I've thought about that Tuesday morning a lot since I got back. The way Tara's text came in before I was even fully awake. The way I read it 3 times and still understood it the first time. There's a particular kind of clarity that arrives with a hurt you didn't see coming. Not because it was hidden, but because you simply couldn't let yourself look. What happened to Tara's wedding wasn't something I caused, and it wasn't something I could have fixed if I'd been standing in that venue in a dress I probably would have paid for myself. The problems between her and Cole were real and old, and no amount of me being present in that room would have smoothed over what had been building for a year. I knew that. I think somewhere she knew it too. But here's what I keep coming back to. The people who are most likely to be called when everything falls apart are almost always the same people who were quietly set aside when things seemed fine. That's not coincidence. It's the shape of a certain kind of relationship, one where your value is measured entirely by your usefulness in a crisis. Tara didn't cut me from her guest list because she didn't love me. She cut me because, in that particular calculation, I was a safe person to lose. I would understand. I would absorb it. I always had before. And she wasn't wrong about my history. She was wrong about my future. What I did. Booking that trip, going anyway. Sitting by that river in Savannah while my phone filled up with calls I didn't answer. Wasn't an act of cruelty. It was the first time in a long time that I applied to myself the same basic consideration I had always extended to everyone else. The question I finally asked wasn't how do I make this easier for Tara, but what do I actually need right now? That question, simple as it sounds, felt almost foreign in my own mouth. There's something that happens when you consistently show up for people who don't think to show up for you. Not because they're evil, but because you've trained them not to have to. They stop seeing the cost of what you give. They stop asking if you're okay because you've never given them reason to believe you might not be. And eventually the relationship becomes lopsided in a way that neither of you names out loud, until something breaks it open and you're both standing in the wreckage trying to figure out how you got there. I don't think Tara is a bad person. I think she got used to a version of me that I'm no longer willing to be. That's not her fault entirely. I built that version. I maintained it for years. The trip to Savannah was just the moment I finally stopped. What I learned, not from a book, not from advice, but from 4 days alone with myself and a river I'd never seen before, is that your integrity toward yourself is the foundation everything else rests on. Not selfishness, not hardness, integrity. Knowing what you've given, knowing what you're worth, and refusing to accept an accounting that doesn't add up. Wendy asked me, when I got home, if I felt guilty. I told her honestly I felt clear. And clear, after years of carrying everyone else's confusion, felt like the most luxurious thing in the world.